Miami and SMU are on a collision course for the ACC Championship game, but they both have 3 games left to play. Who's most likely to trip up?
You are Locked On ACC, your daily podcast on the Atlantic Coast Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Shout out to the everydayers, and thank you so much for making Locked On ACC your first listen and your first watch today. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. On this episode of Locked On ACC, we'll talk about the players of the week. Finally, what I've been hoping would happened this week. We'll talk about the ACC in the top 25 because we snuck in a fifth. We snuck in a fifth in the AP this week. But let's talk about Miami and SMU, who are the only 2 teams in the conference that control their own destiny right now for the ACC Championship game. He is Kenton Gibbs from Locked On Wolfpack. I am Alex Dono from Locked On Canes. All right, Kenton, before we look at the schedules, just kind of going off of how they've played so far this year, between Miami or SMU, both have had some close calls. Miami, a couple of very close calls. SMU probably should have lost to Duke in overtime a couple weeks ago, but they got it done. We all remember what happened to Miami against Cal and Virginia Tech. Which of those 2 teams do you think is more likely to slip up?
I think it has to be SMU if you're shooting off the hip. If you don't add in context, you don't look at schedule, you don't look at, well, these last couple games were played close, whatever. You're just thinking about who these teams have been in totality. You think SMU has to be more likely to slip because they've already slipped this season. Granted, against a better team than I think any one of these teams has played outside.
BYU,
really good. I don't think Miami's played his team as good. I don't think Miami has played a team as good as BYU. I don't think SMU has played another team that's as good as BYU. However, with that being said, I still saw a lot of slippage in areas we were concerned about. We were concerned about the offensive line, and BYU in that game won the trenches handily. It wasn't like, oh, this is all on Preston Stone, and everything was rolling outside of Preston, and he's the reason. No, they got beat up front. They took some lumps. They took some bruises, but like a true champion does, they got up off the mat, they licked their wounds, and they got better. Miami, on the other hand, I mean, hey, they've been up, they've been down, they play a lot of dangerous ball, they play a lot of scary ball, but you know what I like about Miami this year? They're like an episode of Justice League. They're like an episode of Static Shock. They're like an episode of your favorite superhero show. Regardless of how bad the superhero gets in trouble, he's always going to come out as the winner at the end of the episode. Those boys got plot armor named Cameron Jarquevius Ward. Okay, that's not his actual middle name, but you get the point.
Might be.
Cam Ward is plot armor for these guys that he covers up. They say love covers over a multitude of sins. A great quarterback covers over a multitude of mistakes by your team, and that's what he's done. So I would say, shooting from the hip, Miami is more likely to stay undefeated than SMU. SMU would be more likely to stumble. And y'all know how much I love Saponi Express. Y'all know how much I love Sherwood Blunt Nose Boosters. You know how much I love them. But I got to say, Miami is more likely to hold court here.
Yeah, and so far, both teams have at least a little bit punched above their weight. SMU a lot more so because SMU, Kenton, they have actually become they're the first team ever in the first year of making the jump from Group of 5 to Power 5 or Power 4 now to start 5-0 on their conference schedule. Mm-hmm. No one has ever done that before in their first season in a power conference. So SMU, they have already exceeded expectations this year. I want to say their over under on wins prior to the season, I think was 7.5. It might have gone up to 8.5, but I think they're already over that at 8-1 this year, or they're about to go over it at some point. You know, Miami, obviously Miami is not punched above their weight as much, but, you know, most people preseason would have said the likeliest ACC championship game would be Florida State. That's not going to happen. Or Clemson. Clemson's behind the 8 ball. It's still possible for them to get in if one of Miami or SMU loses a game. the rest of the way. Miami's over under on wins was 9.5. They're 9-0 with 3 games left, so they probably will get there. I love the phrase plot armor that you used. And at some point, Kenton, whether it happens in their regular season schedule or if it happens in the ACC championship game or college football playoff, like we're going to find out if Miami's defense, which has struggled at times, can be just good enough as they've been with the number 1 offense in the country, because it's so crazy. And it's like, I've just learned watching Miami this year to expect the unexpected, Kenton, because there are times, and it's usually around the second and third quarter, when the defense can't stop a nosebleed. And then suddenly, when they actually need to step up, I don't know why they can't do this, for an entire game, but when they need to step up most, like in the fourth quarter against Duke, they allowed 51 total yards in the fourth quarter, and they had 2 3-and-outs forced and 2 takeaways. That was how they ended the game. Like, I don't know how that was the same defense that was giving up 4-play, 83-yard touchdown drives earlier in the game, but they have at least shown the ability, as you've said, to be opportunistic this year.
Not only that, let's take it a step further, shall we? You talk about opportunistic or how they show up and when they decide to show up. The biggest example to me of that defense showing up when it mattered most, the Miami Hurricanes had 2 games that were said to be, the refs bailed them out. The refs saved them in this one. One of them was against the Cal Golden Bears. Now, our good friend Lawrence Ross would be the first person to tell you this, and so would I. Before this last weekend, where Cal hangs 44 on the Oregon State Beavers, do you know the team that they put up the most points all year against? Miami. It was Miami. So you talk about, wow, this team, they have those moments where they can't stop anybody, including offenses that are dysfunctional and inept. But in that fourth quarter, I believe Cal had like 10 yards or something insane like that.
You're right. Yeah, it's about that. Yeah.
That's what I mean by opportunistic. Not only is it opportunistic in terms of turnovers, but when the team decides to crawl into a shell and say, we've got this one control, oh, great. Here's our opportunity to squeeze the life out of that team in a way that they have just given us the right to, because if they kept playing the offense they've been playing all game, we might be in trouble. But they think, whatever the case is, and then they turn it up and turn that notch on and make it happen. I would just caution this team. You will not always be able to turn that notch on in the right moment.
Yeah.
Those bad habits will follow you. They will travel. But again, with Cam Ward on your side, you have a lot more room for error and a lot more grace than most of these teams have. I like Jennings. I like Jennings a lot. I think he's going to grow into I think he's really good right now. I think he has potential to grow into ACC Player of the Year type of guy. With that being said, SMU does not have that. They have a better, or not even better, they have an equivalent crew around him, I would say. That offensive line has been, they've been just mauling folks. And that was supposed to be the concern. And yet, Brashard Smith has his way whenever he wants against some of the best rushing defenses in the nation. So, they're, for the most part, they're close in a lot of ways. But the difference to me is one team has Cam Ward, one team does not.
Yeah, and both teams obviously have flaws.
Yes.
But and we'll talk when we come back about the remaining schedules, because Kenton, I know for the Clemson fans watching this, you're obviously hoping that just one of these 2 teams needs to lose a game, and you need to win out.
Trip, stumble,
just
do something wrong. Do something.
Clemson still has an opportunity for as discouraging as it was, because they just don't lose at home at night, and that's what happened to them against Louisville. They hadn't lost a home night game in Death Valley in I don't know how many years. Like, we're talking decades, and that just happened to them. But they still have an opportunity. But between Miami and SMU, we'll take a look at their remaining schedules on the other side. Who's more liable to slip up based on who that they're playing against? You guys want to keep it locked right here. We got Kenton Gibbs from Locked On Wolfpack. I am Alex Dono from Locked On Canes. We're only getting started on this new episode of Locked On ACC. I'm so excited we have this awesome partnership with Roy, and it's time to recognize the Roy Player of the Week. So far this season, we've pooled over $20,000 to support players on Roy. Micro deposits lead to massive change. With the Roy app, you can direct your support to the athletes you love, ensuring that all funds go to the specific player you choose. Unlike collectives who you know exactly where your support is going, and you even receive exclusive content like personal videos and updates after the season. And the best part, it's risk-free. If the athlete transfers or doesn't deliver the content, you get your money back. This week, we're supporting Xavier Restrepo, a Miami receiver who just became Miami, and they've been playing football for 99 years in Coral Gables, and Restrepo just became Miami's all-time leading receiver this past weekend, passing Santana Moss. We just pitched in $100. We'd love for you to join us. Even $10 makes a difference. Let's let Xavier Restrepo see the love and keep him connected to Miami. Remember, pay today, celebrate tomorrow. Your support sets the team up for success. Plus, don't miss out on Roy's exciting giveaway. Win 2 tickets to a game in November. Just download Roy, create an account, and enter referral code LOCKEDON, and you're entered. Already on Roy, any contribution to an athlete's campaign also gets you entered automatically. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited. Download Roy now and join the NIL game with no subscriptions and no fees. And be sure to check him out on Instagram, Facebook, and X at Roy_. Return on you for more info. We're also proudly brought to you by FanDuel. And guys, we've been having so much fun this college football season making money. So much fun this NFL season. Get ready to tackle the NFL with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Thank you so much for making this Locked On ACC episode your first listen and your first watch today. For your next listen, make sure you check out our other shows. Kenton on Locked On Wolfpack. I host Locked On Canes. All right, so Kenton, like you look at both of these remaining schedules for Miami and SMU, all conference opponents remaining, 3 games remaining for each. They should both win all of their remaining games if you go based on, who the favorites are going to be in those games.
Right.
Miami's got Georgia Tech on the road this weekend. I don't know for sure. We don't know for sure if Haynes King is going to play or not, coming off injury for the Yellow Jackets. I think Vegas is expecting him to play because it's an 11.5-point spread in Miami's favor. I think if he wasn't going to play, it'd be more like 20, 21. But Miami's got Georgia Tech this weekend, then a bye week, then Wake Forest at home, and then at the Dome at Syracuse to finish out the year. SMU has Boston College at home. They're actually off this weekend. So bye week, November 16th, SMU will host Boston College. They'll be at Virginia November 23rd. We could talk about Virginia because earlier this season, they looked like they could upset almost anybody, maybe not as much lately. And then SMU will wrap up their regular season at home, not on the road, at home against Cal. So I don't know. It seems like SMU's schedule a little easier than Miami's.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Miami's schedule has formidable teams left that you're like, oh, they could go to a serious or decent bowl game. They have a lot in front of them. Not so much for SMU. I mean, you said they have Boston College, Virginia, and Cal. Is Cal still in contention for a bowl game? Have they lost 7 yet? I want to say they're exactly at 6.
So they're 4-4.
Oh, they're 4-4. Okay. So
yeah, they're in contention.
So they've got to finish out these last 4 in a strong manner. They got Wake Forest and Stanford ahead of them, so they could get
bowl eligibility. 500.
Yeah, they got bowl eligibility still on the table for them. Boston College came out the gates as world beaters and have seemingly fallen flat since. And Virginia, very similar vein. They came out looking like, hey, we can upset anybody. We may not be consistently a great team, but we can upset some folks. As of late, it's been a little hairy. As opposed to the 3 on the other side, which, by the way, are not great teams, but you have enough good over there to where there's a world where Kyle McCord does not have a Kyle McCord moment and they make that game very competitive, possibly win. You know what I mean? That's definitely a thing that you would see on Miami's schedule. So again, Miami has the plot armor known as Cam Ward, but this is definitely a tougher stretch the remaining way for Miami than Cal. And I'll tell you this much: at the end of the day, for Miami than SMU. And I'll tell you this much: at the end of the day, you look at Georgia Tech with Haynes King; they're excellent at running the ball. Miami struggles with tackling. They have got to get that together. That has to be something that they do at a high level, or else you will see that Jamal Haynes guy doing a lot of running. You'll see him doing a lot of strutting and dancing in the end zone. You have to clean those things up. And you have a Syracuse team that they pitch around the yard just as good as anybody. Obviously, Kyle McCord has had his Kyle McCord moments, but when he's not having that moment where he's like, oh, that defender looks nice, I could throw it right to him. I could throw it right to him right now. Nobody's going to know. Kyle, everybody's going to know. What are you doing? If he doesn't have one of those moments, that's a serious team as well. So I think Miami's path is a little harder, but again, I think that they're a better team.
Yeah. So and then we'll see what happens. And now I guess the only other team that really has a shot to get to Charlotte is Clemson, because in recent weeks we were talking about Virginia Tech, who had one conference loss. Now they were in a tough spot last weekend, Kenton, because they had to take on Syracuse without Kyle McCord, without Bashal Tutin. They still had a 21-3 lead. They blew it. They ended up losing in overtime. But unfortunately, that almost, it basically eliminated Virginia Tech from contention. I don't think there's anyone else who even has a shot now outside of Clemson.
Yeah, it's looking really shaky for everybody else. And I'll tell you this much: the Hokies really, really, really were such a letdown at the end of that game, because when you got that massive lead, like literally do what you do best. And granted, I understand your best players at doing what you do best, right? Your quarterback, who's a dynamic rusher, as well as Bashal Tutin, who is dynamic with that rock under his arm as well. They were both out. But damn it, you got to lean on that offensive line and say, listen, carry us home. Carry us home. Help us salt this clock away, and we'll be just fine.
Hold on. I was sleeping on Pitt. I don't want to Pitt just lost their first game. So, and you know what, Kenton? Pitt's got a head-to-head coming up against Clemson on the 16th of November. So
I was just about to say, you're acting like the national media and counting Pitt out.
Yeah.
When they're still right there. Pitt. They're still right there, 3-1 in conference. And I'll tell you what, although they do have a significantly tougher road than anybody else, because they have not one.
4 games left. Yeah.
They got 4 games left, but not one, but 2 ranked in conference opponents coming up. Because after Clemson, who do you play next? The Louisville Cardinals.
On the road.
They have the toughest stretch coming up. But I'll tell you what, if Pitt has shown anything in this year of our Lord and Savior 2024, their theme song for this year would be Kendrick Lamar, Count Me Out, because they love it when you count them out. They love it when you say they don't got a shot. They love it when you say, oh, man, that Pitt team is just lowly, no good, down low, they can't do nothing right. They'll show up and show out like they've done all season. So I think that while we are kind of throwing Pitt in the island of misfit toys after this long, they're right there as well.
Yeah, I know that with the Pitt fans, when they heard me say Clemson's the only other team with a shot, they're like, you're killing me. You're sleeping on Pitt.
Y'all know I'm going to hold it down, Pitt fans. Y'all know I'm going to hold it down for you, Pitt. And here's the crazy part, Donald. Before you joined this show a couple years ago, I said Kenny Pickett is not a first-round quarterback. And, boy, you would have swore from Pitt fans I called that man everything but a child of God and said something about their mamas. Because they told, what does this guy know? What is it? I said, listen, I've been around ball enough. He's a good quarterback. He's a great college quarterback. That's not a first-round pick. They did pick him in the first round. I was wrong. But how'd that work out for the team to pick him in the first round?
Not well.
Okay. No. But again, Pitt fans, I'm going to hold you down. I'm going to always tell it like it is. If your team is winning, I'm going to show you love. If your team is losing, you're going to get some work, Florida State.
Oof, boy, what a and by the way, I encourage, if you haven't seen the segment that we did yesterday with Brian Smith from Locked On Seminoles. He broke it down so well. The issues Mike Norvell has been having there. If it would be enough to let Mike clean house, or if you've got to fire him. But then if you decide you've got to fire him, how do you fire him when you're going to owe him $63.8 million? I know that some Florida State fans are like begging him, Mike, please resign. But yeah, why would he resign when they owe him $63.8 million? So, it's one of those things. Let's take a look at the AP top 25. Now, I mentioned there's now 5 ACC teams in it, which is good. It's a good optics for the ACC. Miami moves up a spot into the top 4 because Penn State losing to Ohio State, it allowed Miami and Texas to both move up a spot. Oregon at number 1, that's unchanged, deservedly so. 9-0, they've played a tough schedule so far. Georgia and Ohio State, both 1 loss, 2 and 3. That's the kind of respect the ACC gets. Miami at 4, Texas 5, Penn State 6, Tennessee 7, Indiana, they're unbeaten, but they've got 2 of their toughest games yet to play. They've got Michigan and Ohio State both left on their schedule. So if they do win those games, they're obviously they would end up in the top 5 if they did that. BYU at 9, Notre Dame 10, Bama, Boise State, SMU. So SMU deservedly, they moved up 7 spots, which is a good boost for them. LSU 14, Texas A&M 15, Ole Miss, Iowa State, Army, Clemson fell 8 spots, Kenton. And listen, I'm not necessarily saying they didn't deserve to drop 8 spots, but if that were an SEC team that lost to a ranked opponent, because Louisville's now ranked, they would have dropped a spot or 2. They saw Clemson lose to Louisville, like, oh, that's it. Drop them as far as we possibly can.
Did Bama drop 8 after losing to Vanderbilt?
No. What did they drop?
Oh, okay.
3 spots, maybe? I don't even remember.
Okay. Did they drop 8 after losing to Tennessee for their second loss? I don't believe they did.
No.
So
it's a bye week. It's not a loss.
It's just so they're cannibalizing each other. But the terrible old ACC, that means you got a bad loss. Any loss to ACC is a bad loss. Any loss in SEC is to a great team, apparently.
Yeah, and then you got Washington State 20, Colorado 21, Kansas State, Pitt. Pitt deserved to fall. They fell 5 spots, not as far as Clemson fell to number 23. You got Vanderbilt 24th and Louisville. Louisville is back in the top 25, and I'm glad they did right by Louisville, Kenton, because again, I mentioned how uncommon it is for a visitor to win a night game in Death Valley. Louisville went there, and it's not as if they Clemson had a couple of bad fumbles, self-inflicted wounds. Like Louisville went in there and they stuck it to them, and they deserve to be ranked now.
They earned every bit of that win. You cannot take away nothing from those guys. They did everything. And here's the thing, right? It would be one thing if they kind of stuck around and Clemson muddied themselves and, made it easy for them. They took that game from Clemson from start to finish. They took it. And that's something that you cannot deny. That's something you cannot argue. That's something you cannot say, well, how, why Clemson? They took it. And that's all there is to it.
We got a new batch of ACC weekly honors, Week 10 Players of the Week. Finally, Xavier Restrepo gets recognized. You guys want to keep it locked right here. We're not done yet on this brand new episode of Locked On ACC. Guys, what has really helped me with my long nights of college football watching over the weekends has been Z-Biotics pre-alcohol. Z-Biotics pre-alcohol probiotic drink is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking. Here's how it works when you drink. Alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. It's this byproduct, not dehydration, that's to blame for your rough next day. Pre-alcohol produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down. Just remember to make Z-Biotics your first drink of the night. Drink responsibly, and then you'll feel at your best tomorrow. Guys, it's so easy. I've made this a part of my weekend routine. Step 1, drink pre-alcohol. For best results, make pre-alcohol your first drink of the night. Step 2, drink responsibly. Pace yourself. Hydrate and get a good night's sleep. Step 3, enjoy tomorrow. Wake up feeling refreshed and ready to take on the day. Go to zbiotics.com/lockdown Locked On College to learn more and get 15% off your first order when you use Locked On College at checkout. ZBiotics is backed with a 100% money-back guarantee. So if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they'll refund your money, no questions asked. Remember to head to zbiotics.com/LockedOnCollege and use code LockedOnCollege at checkout for 15% off. Thank you for making Locked On ACC your first listen and your first watch today. All right, so week 10 players of the week. Not surprisingly, Cam Ward, quarterback of the week, 400 passing yards, 5 touchdowns. Ward actually, he tied Miami's single season touchdown passing record, which was set a long time ago by Steve Walsh. Ward threw his 29th touchdown of the season, so he's tied the record with 3 regular season games left to play. Our guy Amarian Hampton at UIC. I know you're not a fan of the Dirty Foot Club, but we're both fans of Amarian Hampton. He
he's
is
a bad
named
man. He's a bad man.
ACC running back of the week, 172 rushing yards, 4 rushing touchdowns. That was kind of the free space though, Kenton, because when you get to go up against Florida State, you usually get to pad your stats a little bit.
Listen, them boys laid it on them thick. Okay, oh my God, mercy, throw in the towel, throw in the flag. It looks like they quit. Go on and throw in the flag, Norvell. Tell them that say you got COVID, say the team got COVID or something. And I feel like 2024, we're not far enough removed to where teams will still play. Just say, hey,
it's still out. I had COVID like 2 months ago. It's still out there.
There you go. Tell them it's a new variant. It's the null variant. We got
null variant.
The null variant. We're gonna give up on these last couple games and we're gonna go on about our way.
Oh man, yeah. So Amarian Hampton feasted on that defense. Now here's the one that brought a smile to my face, because I've watched Xavier Restrepo at Miami. All season long, he's been putting up numbers. Like, he is the ACC's leading receiver this year, but somehow hadn't won receiver of the week. But he finally gets it this week. 8 catches for 146 yards. He actually had a couple drops. He probably should have had 200 yards, 146 receiving yards, a career high 3 touchdowns in the game. He broke or tied 3 different Miami records in that game, Kenton. He became the all-time Miami career receiving yards leader. He passed Santana Moss in doing that. He tied the career touchdown receptions record and the career receptions record at Miami. So that was the biggest performance of Xavier Restrepo's life, and he gets honored by the conference.
Yeah, Xavier Restrepo not only is breaking all those records, he is 3 receptions right now off of a triple crown in the ACC. I mean, he's currently the leader in touchdowns. He's currently the leader in yards, and there's only one player with more receptions than him, and that's Trevor Pena of Syracuse with 54 receptions to his 51. He has earned this. And like you and I both talked about in the past, if there's any week to say, hey, give it to X, he was the X factor in that game. He was the differentiator and the separator. That's like, I mean, obviously Cam Ward is Cam Ward, but if you look at another guy and say, hey, they had this, Duke did not, this is why you won, it's Xavier Restrepo. He deserves it.
Yeah. Other weekly award winners in the ACC. Offensive lineman of the week, Monroe Mills from Louisville. Obviously, they got a huge win. He graded out at 91% according to PFF. 5 knockdown blocks. I think that's a less fancy way to say pancake blocks. Defensive lineman of the week, Bo Atkinson from North Carolina. Linebacker, Marlo Wax from Syracuse. Fantastic player.
Good defensive to see him back, man.
Yeah, for sure. Quincy Riley of Louisville was the defensive back of the week. Again, Louisville, big performance. A lot of players of the week, including Brock Travelstead, the Louisville kicker. He tied the school record for most field goals made in a game with 4, and a second school record with the most field goals made in a quarter with 3 in the Cardinals' road win at Clemson. And rookie of the week, he is everything we said the first month of the season about Eli Holstein. Forget about it, because Isaac Brown is on his way to be ACC Rookie of the Year. Holstein, up until last week, Pittsburgh was still winning, but Holstein wasn't putting up numbers. Isaac Brown at running back for Louisville has been putting up crazy numbers over the last month or so.
I love the Louisville Cardinals. I don't want anybody to take this the wrong way. I have a bone to pick with Isaac Brown here. I think imagine, Dono, if there was a true freshman that went, I don't know, something like 90% completion percentage.
CJ.
I don't know. About 260 some odd yards. I don't know. You know, we've never taken into account before what's the context of the game. How important is the game? We've never taken that into account before. Taking that into account and weighting that, absolutely, I give it to Brown. Obviously, playing against Stanford comes with much less weight than playing against Clemson's defense. Your level of opponent is much different. But last time I checked, Dono, we've never taken that into account before. We've never taken that.
Put up big numbers. We'll give you the award. That's what they usually do. Yeah.
Put up numbers. But if that was the case, Xavier Restrepo would have been receiver of the week one. Who played a tougher team than Florida, even though we knew, hey, this Florida team's kind of lackadaisical. Who played a better team and who played better? That it was clearer to where it was like, hey, doesn't matter if you're playing an inferior opponent. You've cleared. I'm just saying. So, young CJ Bailey may have something to say about that. Yeah. But in all fairness, Isaac Brown has consistently been a dude from day one in this season, where as opposed to CJ Bailey, who, showed up to the party late. So I agree that voting for Rookie of the Year overall is probably going to be Brown, Holstein, Bailey.
Yeah. I'm still mad about the fans throwing garbage on the field at Clemson. If that happened in a European soccer stadium, they would play in an empty stadium the next home game. Is how they do that over there.
And I'm telling you right now, that's what I think these conferences need to start doing. That's what I think these conferences need to start doing. You know what? Hey, I'm glad you enjoyed your time. Next home game, y'all remember the COVID games when they put the little cardboard cutouts in the don't worry. We'll put the cardboard cutouts right there. Y'all can wait outside the gate screaming and nagging and moaning. You are not getting into this stadium. We will have you trespassed.
Yep.
Thank you.
Fun show today as always. And man, I'm glad I at least wore a polo today, because Kenton, he's dressed like your upper middle management now.
I'm excited.
I'm going to be reporting to you.
The Clemson is over party is here, and I had to come in style to celebrate it. Because the minute I believed in Dabo, he said, "You believe in what? Brother, is this 2018? Is this 2020? Who do you think I am?" He's shown me who he is. I believe him. Don't worry about it.
They need to start taking calls again on his coach's show, because they stopped doing that this year.
Yeah. He needs old Tyler from Spartanburg to get them together.
He sure does. Well, we'll talk to everyone next time. Make sure to smash that thumbs up button and subscribe to Locked On ACC. If you listen to the audio version, subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your pods. And we'll talk to you again tomorrow on another episode of Locked On ACC, part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.